here has heard that there's no substitute for hard work. What about genius is 1% inspiration, 99% perspiration? What about practice makes perfect? Just like you, it was probably ingrained in me as I grew up that hard work leads to success. But what about if that is not true? What about if the opposite is true? I'm here today to demonstrate that I found a surprising truth that the opposite is truth. I will demonstrate the way to success and happiness in your life. Let me start by taking you back to my university days. At my school, the dean of the business school gave a talk. He said, at sport, the winners, they lift the trophy and they celebrate, while the silver medalist is the first loser. They walk off the pitch crying. He said, why don't we approach our studies in the same way? Why don't we all study hard to become winners? I listened to him and something inside me fired up. I decided then to study very hard. And as you will learn today, when I set the goal, I become relentless. So through my studies, I worked as hard as I could to get the scholarships and top my classes. And then into the workplace, I brought with me this winning mindset. I elbowed my way to the top of the corporate ladder, coming very early to the office, impressing my bosses, hitting my bonuses. And I was lucky. I was one of those people who didn't need much sleep. So I could work very hard. This is a photo of me 10 years ago when I was a general manager in Jakarta, Indonesia at a leading medical company. And everything went well until suddenly I started to fall into a depression. I burnt out and I hit rock bottom. And I gained a lot of weight. I lost my healthy habits and I replaced them with bad habits. I started to eat poorly, I couldn't sleep, and suddenly I was very lonely, I was isolated, and it brought me to the lowest point of my life when I decided to start to plan for my own funeral. At the lowest point of my life, I thought my life was over. I was so deep in a depression. But then suddenly, a voice inside me said that I was sick and tired of being sick and tired. I decided to turn my life around. I then walked into a gym and I asked the trainer in the gym, what's the hardest race in the world? The trainer looked at me and he said, the Ironman. The Ironman race is a multi-sport event where you swim 3.8 kilometers, you cycle 180 kilometers, and you run a full marathon, 42 kilometers, all in one row, all in one day. And then he said, but I suggest that you start with a half Ironman. That's half that distance. Again, I got fired up. Something inside me lit a fire, and I said, I'd love to do that. Train me for that. I signed up with a trainer, and I started to train relentlessly. Just like I had studied hard and worked hard, I threw myself in the Ironman sport, training every day, as hard as I could. I trained through rain, through exhaustion, and I pushed. I became a good Ironman competitor. But then one day, I came across an article by the former world #1 tennis player, Roger Federer. The article said that he used to sleep a lot in order to perform well. He even went on to say, if I don't sleep 11 to 12 hours per day, it's not right. I had to read that again. Really? 11 to 12 hours a day? You gotta be joking. Who would sleep 11 to 12 hours a day? So I went out to read more and more and study him. And he shared the secret to my success. Why I could perform so well, why I could be the best in the world, was because I rested well. He slept, he took naps, and that his body was able to recover. So for the first time in my life, I asked myself, have I neglected an important part of my life? Have I neglected sleep and rest? That was never any part of my life until that moment. Then I was thinking, what about my Ironman sport? I had reached some success so far, but I couldn't reach much further. So I asked myself, what about if I sleep more, can I perform better in my Ironman sport as an athlete? And that was the birth of the sleeping experiment. I called up JJ at JJ Pro. He's a data scientist who works with professional athletes to really measure the performance of the best athletes in the world. I went to see him, and he put on all kind of measuring tools on me, including heart rate meter, power meter, and everything else. And the game plan was to do 2 Ironman races, training with the same equipment, the same sleep pattern for one race, and more sleep for another race. I will use the same equipment and nutrition. This was when the sleeping experiment was born. There was 1 race in Thailand and 1 race in Malaysia, so it was similar temperatures. For the first race in Malaysia, I would sleep my usual 5.5 hours per night. I would sleep and I would train 16 hours per week, which was my usual volume. I performed at the race. That's me being tracked up with JJ Pro with all the kind of equipment. And here am I in Malaysia performing and hitting a good result with 5 hours and 21. That was my finish time after I had slept my usual 5.5 hours per night and trained my 16 hours per week. For the next race, the race in Thailand, it was time for me to sleep like I never had slept before. I had to start buying all these books and reading journals, articles, everything I could find on sleep and on healthy habits. I studied it, and with the same intensity as everything else I'd done before in my life. As you know by now, when I put my mind into something, I become relentless. So I really did everything I could to be the best sleeper. This is me, and as you can see, I even sleep with an eye mask, I sleep with earplugs, and I wore a tennis ball taped on my back. I wear pajamas, the room was very cold. I did everything to the extreme to make sure I could sleep really well. I would dedicate my evenings to block times when I had to be and have quiet time and when I need to go to sleep. My wife, who's here today, she thought I looked like a zombie, but as she's a lovely lady, our relationship didn't have any problems. But this is what I was looking like during the sleeping experiment. So for 1 month leading up to this race in Thailand, I was sleeping like never before in my life. I slept 7.5 hours in average per night. This is me at the finish line at the race in Thailand, coming, screaming, roaring, full of energy. I didn't just race. I soared. I flew through the race full of happiness and energy. And for the first time in my life, I hit below 5 hours of the half Ironman distance. And this was over 20 minutes faster than all my other times over 10 years that I had tried the sport. I started to understand, wow, if I sleep more and train and practice less, I can achieve more in my life. Something started to be born inside me here. And let me just show you here the details. So here's the race in Malaysia. You can see I trained 16 hours per week, slept 5.5 hours. My time was 5 hours and 21 minutes. And then in Thailand, I reduced my training volume with 12%. And that's a huge drop in training volume. 12% less training. I increased my sleep with 2 hours per night to 7.5 hours. Something I never done in my life. And the race time was 4 hours and 56 minutes. In that sport, we chase seconds, and here I am more than 20 minutes faster. So I start to understand I can sleep myself to success. I can sleep myself to success. And while I was happy with the improvement in my athletic performance, I then started to ask myself, if this can help me so much in my Ironman, what about in my other areas of my life? What about in my career? What about in my personal life and so on? What can sleep do there? It was time to go back into the books again. It was time to do more research. And I started to research everything I could find about the link between sleep and performance in life. Then I find out that when it comes to motor skills, like typing and learning an instrument, they were testing groups and with students who were playing the instrument and learning to play an instrument. One group who kept playing, who kept practicing, the other group went to take a nap. The group who went to take a nap learned the instrument much faster. And then, when it comes to learning, again they did experiments with students. And the students who kept learning, who kept staying in class was one group, and then the other group, they were going to take a rest. And the students who went to take a rest learned the subjects better than the other group. Then, finally, when it comes to problem solving, they did same experiments, two groups again. One group who kept discussing solving a problem, another group who started to discuss the problem solving and then went to sleep for a while. You can guess yourself which group was best at solving the problem. So here I start to be really convinced that sleep is really an overlooked thing in our lives when it comes to success. Just like a computer have a reset button, we need to reset ourselves, we need to remove our toxins, we need to clear our mind, and we need to learn when we are having a rest as well. I wanted to do the test one more time. Remember I said before that was a full Ironman distance, and I tested it this year. This is me just last month in Sweden doing the full Ironman race. I wanted to see if I could sleep my way to success a second time. And this time I completed a full race in 10 hours and 29 minutes. Again, for the first time in over 10 years, I managed to go below 10 and a half hours. So I proved to myself that I could sleep my way to success a second time. So when I think about what makes us successful in life, my perception was that it was through hard work. But I found today a different truth. The truth that I share with you, that it's not hard work, it's purposeful work, but it's also sleep, it's rest, it's healthy nutrition, and it's exercise. I hope that moving forward, that we take this as a learning for all ourselves, for our healthy habits and for our society, that we learn to balance our lives and that we don't push too hard. And this is Gabby Thomas from the Olympics in Paris this summer. And she said that in order to dream big, you had to dream well. I hope that tonight you have a good rest and a good dream, and that you raise tomorrow to chase all your dreams. Thank you.